I was born to the sound of drums, not the kind that call people to war, or the kind that chase away spirits. The old women said the drums that greeted me were soft and bright, like a heartbeat that belonged to the sky itself. They said this was how the ancestors welcomed a child they recognized. I didn't believe them, not then. My name is Tayo, and I never thought I would matter to anyone outside my family's mud brick courtyard at the edge of our village. Koro was not a quiet place. It breathed and shifted like a living creature. Goats bleated against woven fences. Children raced barefoot across warm dust. Men hammered at bronze tools, and women returned from the river with baskets resting on their hips like crowns. The air smelled of roasted yam and palm oil in the mornings, and at night the wind carried the perfume of wood smoke and mango leaves. Everything in Koro had rhythm, even our shadows, but only once a year did the rhythm become something sacred. Only once a year did the drummers wear the white paint across their cheeks, and the elders polish their walking sticks until they gleamed, and the oracle emerged from her hut with the spirit veil. Only once a year came the Ancestral Festival, when the living would call to the dead and honor those whose footsteps carried us to this soil. I was just the boy who swept the training yard. My job was simple: walk the perimeter. After the soldiers had finished their drills, collect the broken arrows, toss the sand where blood had spilled, and water the dust so the next day's training would not choke the lungs. And that was how I first saw Kai. He was not the kind of warrior the bards exaggerated. He was tall, yes, and strong. His shoulders looked carved by stonecutters, but he moved like someone who had nothing to prove. When the younger fighters struck at him with their spears, he didn't shout or snarl. He blocked, redirected, stepped aside, and the blows lost their power like water poured into sand. I would watch him from the corner, broom in hand, pretending to be busy, but he always knew when I was there. He would glance at me, not long enough to embarrass me, not long enough to show interest, but long enough to turn my knees soft. The day of the festival arrived hotter than any I remembered. Even the sun looked tired. Everyone gathered in the village square, around the fire pit that had been dug deeper that morning. Children wore fresh beads. Women tied bright cloth around their waists. Men rubbed red earth on their foreheads, smearing it like a blessing. I stood at the edge, hidden in the shade of the baobab tree, thinking about nothing except not being seen. The oracle walked into the circle at dusk. Her veil was made of hundreds of shells, each one catching orange firelight and clinking softly as she moved. She carried a staff wrapped in goat hide, and I swear the wind curled around her ankles as if afraid to touch her skin. She raised her hand, and the drummers struck their first beat. It was not a normal rhythm. It crawled up my arms, through my ribs, and into my throat. It was like someone had slipped fingers into my chest and squeezed. The oracle stopped walking. She turned. Her hand lifted, trembling, and pointed straight at me. No one spoke at first. The fire cracked, small sparks lifting into the twilight like glowing insects. I felt my heart shake my ribs. I felt my spine stiffen. I felt every eye fall on me. Tayo, she said, not loud, not dramatic, just my name, spoken like she had always known it, like she had been waiting for the moment to let it escape her lips. My knees nearly folded. I heard the crowd whisper, "Why him? The dancer must be chosen by the spirits. He is nobody." I didn't take offense. They were right. But then I looked across the circle. Kai was watching me, not with curiosity, not with doubt. He was observing me, like someone studies a blade, measuring what it might do. I felt warm all over, and it wasn't from the fire. The oracle gestured again, sharper this time. I stepped forward before I could think. Someone touched my arm. My mother. Her face was pale with fear. "Don't," she whispered, hushed and frantic. "Once you step inside the circle, you do not belong to yourself anymore." I wanted to tell her I wasn't going into the circle for the spirits. I wasn't going for honor. I wasn't going for the ancestors' love or the village's approval. I was going because he was looking, but I could never say those words, so I pulled my arm free and walked toward the flames. The drummers changed their rhythm. I know them all by ear. They don't call it music. We call it pathways. Every beat leads you somewhere. To prayer, to grief, to courage. The beat they played then was the one used to open the world between breath and memory. They brought me the anklets, bronze discs strung on leather. They weren't heavy, only a little warm, like they had been resting near a body. The oracle said nothing else. I bent down, tied them to my ankles, and stood in the center of the circle. The drums struck harder. My chest filled with air. My legs moved before my mind did. I felt the sand under my heels, the beads bouncing against my hips, the fire at my back. I spun once, twice, 3 times, and the world blurred. I wasn't dancing for them, not for the elders, not for the gods, not for the bones buried in the ground. I danced because I wanted him to see me, and gods he did. Every time I moved, I felt his gaze like a hand pressed to my skin. When I lifted my arms, I felt heat rise up my throat. When I kicked dust into sparks, the drummers gasped. When I arched my back, I thought I heard someone praying. The dance ended when my knees buckled. I didn't fall. Someone caught me. The crowd broke into shouts and cries of disbelief, because the person who wrapped his arms around my waist was not my mother, not an elder, not a healer. It was Kai, the high warrior. He pulled me against his chest as if lifting a fallen comrade from battle. His grip was sure, warm, steady. He leaned down, his breath brushing the side of my neck. "Do you know," he murmured, "that every warrior in this circle just forgot how to breathe?" My lips trembled. I couldn't reply. My heart pounded against my ribs like a fist trying to escape. He chuckled softly, almost private. Then he lifted his head and faced the entire village. It was the first time I saw him smile, and it was directed at no one but me. The drums went silent. Night swallowed the firelight, and the ancestors, I swear, leaned closer to listen. When Kai carried me from the circle, the villagers did not speak. They stared as if the ground itself had opened and swallowed their expectations. The oracle didn't object. The elders didn't interrupt. Even the drummers sat frozen, palms resting on their instruments, as if the drums had become too sacred to touch. The flames behind us hissed like something angry and alive. His arms stayed firmly wrapped around my waist, steadying me with ease. And I realized something dangerous. I was not weak. I was trembling. My feet hardly touched the earth as he walked, and for a moment I thought he would take me toward the warrior's compound, where no uninvited soul dared step. But instead, he turned toward the river. The shadows of the baobab trees leaned long across the path, and lantern light from the village slowly faded behind us. The night air smelled of wet stone and crushed leaves, and the cicadas sang as if to replace the drums that had fallen silent. He didn't say a word. I could feel my pulse in my wrists, in my throat, in the base of my spine. I was aware of every inch of him, of the muscles beneath his wrapped tunic, of the roughness of his palms, of the way he breathed slow and deep, like a man accustomed to facing death and having it bow to him. He set me down only when we reached the water's edge. Moonlight spilled over the river like silver paint, and mist floated above it, curling around our feet. Somewhere upstream, a fish jumped, breaking the surface with a single soft splash. Kai finally spoke, turning his head slightly as if he didn't want to startle me. "You did not dance like someone who was called," he said. "You danced like someone who was already chosen." His voice was low, not stern, not harsh, but direct in a way that made lying impossible. I stared down at my anklets, still warm against my skin. "I didn't know what I was doing," I admitted. "Good," he said. "People who believe they know everything are the first to bleed." That should have been a warning. Maybe it was. I turned toward him and saw something new. Not the warrior the villagers admired. Not the leader the soldiers followed. Not the man who defeated raiders and rode back through sunset dust like a story come to life. No. In the moonlight he looked younger, his scars softer, his eyes gentler. He was just Kai, a man with questions he'd never dared to ask out loud, and he asked the one I had been afraid to hear. "Why did you look at me while you danced?" I swallowed. I could lie and say I didn't notice him. I could say the ancestors moved my steps. I could pretend I was overwhelmed, blinded, lost in ritual. But something about the river made honesty taste less frightening. "Because I wanted you to see me," I whispered. There was a moment of silence, long enough for the wind to brush through the reeds, long enough for the moon to pass over a cloud. Then Kai stepped closer. Close enough that I could feel the heat of his body, close enough that my breath tangled with his. "Tayo," he said, tasting my name like it was something new, something forbidden, something he was willing to risk. "If you wanted to be seen," he reached out, slow and deliberate, fingers brushing the side of my neck, "then you have been seen." His touch wasn't rough, though I had imagined it would be. It was careful, reverent, as though he feared I might break if he pressed too hard. I leaned into it before I could stop myself. He drew a sharp breath, not a gasp, more like a warrior surprised by an enemy's clever move. Then he laughed once, under his breath, not mocking but amazed. "I have watched you sweep the sand for months," he said, never speaking, never asking, never standing where people could judge you. My cheeks burned. "You never looked my way," I said. He shook his head. "I looked," he replied. "I simply did not let anyone notice." Something in my stomach fluttered. It was not the nervousness of being caught. It was the thrill of being chosen. He stepped to the riverbank, dipped his hand in, and let the droplets fall from his fingers like beads of glass. "The oracle does not point by mistake," he continued, "and the spirits do not call dancers without reason." Then he turned to face me fully, and his eyes, dark, sharp, unflinching, held a question I could feel rather than hear. "What do you think they saw?" I opened my mouth, and that was when the wind changed. It came rushing down river, sudden and wild, whipping leaves into spirals. The moonlight dimmed as if swallowed by clouds, and the reeds began to tremble. The hair on my arms rose. Kai straightened instantly, stepping between me and the water. I thought it was just a gust, some trick of night, but then I heard a faint whisper in the wind, something like the echo of a drumbeat I had never learned. Not a rhythm of dance, a rhythm of warning. The river mist curled upward, thickening into shapes, dozens of them, pale and twisting, like figures without bodies. I smelled burnt herbs, old blood, and clay. The kind of scent you smell only once in your life and never forget. Kai's hand rested on my shoulder, steady and ready. "Do not run," he said softly. "Whatever has come, it came for you." And in that moment, staring into the mist as the spirits uncoiled themselves from the river like hungry memories, I understood two things. The festival was not over, and I was no longer dancing for the living. The mist rose higher. Not like smoke, not like water. It moved with intention, curling around us in thin white ribbons. Kai shifted his stance, body angled in front of me, hand hovering near the spear strapped across his back. The river grew eerily quiet, no frogs, no insects, not even wind. It was the kind of silence you only hear in two places, places where people die, and places where gods listen. One shape separated from the mist. It floated above the river's surface, pale and translucent, like a person drawn from memory rather than flesh. And it spoke my name, Tayo. The sound wasn't loud. It was barely more than breath, like someone whispering from inside my chest. I shook, not because I was afraid, but because I recognized the voice. I looked at Kai, hoping for reassurance. He didn't meet my gaze. He was staring at the spirit, shoulders tense, jaw set. The mist twisted again. Another figure emerged, smaller than the first. It drifted closer until I could see the outline of a face, and then I knew it was my grandmother, the one who had died when I was 6. With the scar above her eyebrow, and the soft smile that always made me think she knew a secret the world wasn't ready for. My knees nearly gave out. I tried to speak, to call her name, but my voice cracked like dry clay. She raised a hand, not fully, just enough for the anklets around my feet to burn. Literally burn. Heat surged through the bronze rings, traveling up my calves like fire-licking bark. I hissed and staggered. Kai's grip tightened on my arm. "Breathe," he said. The word never formed, because the spirit of my grandmother leaned closer, and when she opened her mouth, her lips didn't move. The voice came straight into my skull. "We did not choose you to entertain them." My breath disappeared. I stood frozen, skin prickling, heart pounding like a drum too big for my body. The taller spirit, the one whose shape I could not fully recognize, spoke next. "You danced because you are the door." Kai's head snapped toward it. "Enough," he barked, voice deeper than I'd ever heard. "We are not in the Elder's Hall. Speak plain." The mist rippled, not offended, more like amused. My grandmother's spirit looked at him then, as if seeing him for the first time. Her expression changed. It wasn't respect, wasn't trust, it was warning. "Do not shield the vessel," she said. "Warrior of iron, your blade cannot cut the wind." Kai stepped in front of me anyway. "I will cut whatever threatens him," he growled. The taller spirit floated closer, arms outstretched like a teacher explaining a lesson to a stubborn child. "You mistake the threat." I finally found my voice. "What do you want from me?" The spirit hovered above the water, features shifting in and out of focus. Sometimes a man, sometimes a woman, sometimes something that had never been human at all. "A dancer is not just movement," it said. "A dancer carries the path between worlds." I swallowed hard, trying to steady myself. "But I don't know how," I whispered. The spirit laughed. Not cruelly, more like a sad laugh someone gives when they see a child trying to lift an ox. "You already did." I felt Kai tense beside me. His fingers brushed mine, not by accident but by instinct, grounding me in his warmth. Then he asked the question I didn't dare ask. "What are you here to claim?" The mist thickened and curled like smoke touched by wind. "The festival was never a celebration," the tall spirit answered. "It was a door we sealed with dance, long before your ancestors forgot why." I stared at the river. Something moved beneath the surface, slow, heavy, ancient. A ripple spread outward as if something massive brushed the bottom of the stream. My grandmother's spirit leaned closer, her eyes suddenly sharp. "You woke it." And the river, calm minutes ago, began to churn. Black water foamed. The mist snapped back like a banner in violent wind. I stumbled backward, but the anklets tightened around my ankles like shackles, holding me in place. Kai grabbed my shoulders. "What did you do when you danced?" he demanded. "I don't know." I gasped. I just moved." "You did not move alone," the tall spirit hissed. And then the river exploded. Something burst from the water, loud, wet, violent. I threw my arms over my head as spray drenched us. The spirits vanished with the force of the eruption, ripping apart like torn cloth. Kai shoved me behind him and drew his spear in one fluid motion. I expected a beast, or some dark creature from old stories, but what climbed from the river was worse. It was human. A man soaked to the bone, skin pale like moonlight, eyes hollow as deep wells. His clothes clung to him like funeral cloth. He staggered toward the shore, hands shaking, breathing like someone drowning on land. Kai raised the spear. "Stop," he commanded. The man fell to his knees and lifted his head. His lips trembled, and he spoke the only words that tore the night apart. "The ancestors sent me to warn the dancer." He looked directly at me. "They're coming." The stranger's voice cracked like wood splitting in a fire. "They're coming." The words hung above the river like smoke, too heavy to drift, too sharp to ignore. Kai didn't lower his spear. His stance shifted, 1 foot back, 1 forward, shoulders angled to strike. He was no longer the man who teased me with quiet laughter at the water's edge. He was the high warrior again, every scar on his chest suddenly meaning something. I stepped toward the stranger. His eyes, gods, they weren't human eyes. They looked like someone had scooped out their color and replaced it with night. "What do you mean?" I whispered. He stared at me as though he'd waited years to see me. As if the moment his gaze landed on my face, some terrible prophecy finally made sense. "They know the door opened," he said. Kai hissed. He didn't like riddles. He liked things he could stab. "Speak plain," he growled. The man swallowed hard, water dripping from his lips. "The spirits who watch the living," he said slowly. "The ones who refused to rest. The ones we drowned." Kai stiffened. My breath stopped. I had heard stories, a few told around dying fires when adults thought we were asleep. There were spirits who did not go to the ancestral halls, spirits who had been denied offerings, spirits who had died with violence in their veins, men who raided, murdered, burned and vanished into the swamps. Stories whispered in warning. The unburied. The stranger lifted trembling hands. We thought they were gone. The river behind him writhed. A muffled splash sounded, then another, then many more, as if dozens of bodies rose beneath the surface, pushing upward like pale branches breaking through ice. Kai stepped back, just enough to block me fully with his body. "Tayo," he said, voice low, "run to the square. Find the oracle. Tell her." Before he finished, a wet arm slammed against the bank. A hand, thin, bone white, gripped the mud. Another beside it, then a face. Water poured from its mouth, as if the river itself was escaping its lungs. It blinked and looked around, taking in the night as though waking from a century of sleep. I screamed. I don't remember meaning to. My throat just tore the sound free. Kai lunged, spear flashing in moonlight. The tip struck the risen thing in the shoulder. Dark water, not blood, splashed out, soaking the ground. The creature didn't make a sound. It simply turned its head toward Kai, slow as a starving predator, learning it has found meat. The stranger shouted, "You cannot kill what has no home." Kai yanked his spear back. Another body climbed from the river, then another, and another, at least 8, maybe more. They moved like sleepwalkers, limbs loose, heads tilting. Their eyes were all the same, dark, bottomless, hungry. The drums at the square began to pound again, far away at first, then faster, louder, not festival rhythms, alarm rhythms, ancestors' warning. Someone had seen them. Kai grabbed my wrist. "Move." I ran. Branches tore my skin, roots snagged my ankles. The anklets beat against my legs, ringing like tiny furious bells. Behind us, the river burst with bodies. Kai's voice roared through the dark. Faster. My lungs burned. My legs shook. But I didn't stop, not until the first lights of the village appeared through the trees. People had already gathered at the square. Warriors rushed past, gripping weapons, half-dressed and wide-eyed. Mothers clutched children. The elders shouted orders that crumbled under panic. And then the oracle stepped forward. She raised her staff. The beads in her veil rattled like bones. The crowd silenced itself. "The river has broken," she said. No one dared breathe. Her voice did not tremble, not even once. The unburied walk. The square erupted into screams. An elder threw a pot of blessed salt against the ground, crying prayers. A warrior dropped his spear in shock. Women wailed, their voices stretching into the night. I stood frozen, chest heaving, sweat cold on my back. The oracle lifted her head, veil swinging. "Tayo." The world narrowed to a pinpoint. Hundreds of eyes turned to me, men who had mocked me, women who barely knew my name, children who laughed when I swept sand, all staring, all afraid. "What do I do?" I pleaded. The oracle pointed toward the river. "You must dance." My stomach twisted. "No, no, I can't." "You already did," she snapped. Kai stepped beside me, spear in hand, jaw set. "I'll protect him," he said. Her veil tilted toward him. "You cannot protect a door," she replied. He bared his teeth. "Watch me." The oracle's voice softened, not in kindness, but in grief. "Warrior, you do not understand." She faced the square, staff raised high. "Tayo is not a dancer." Lightning flashed in the distance, like a blade splitting the sky. "He is the one they will tear apart to seal the world again." And for the first time since the festival began, I wondered if the ancestors had chosen me to save Koro, or to destroy it. The words hung over the square like smoke that refused to fade. "He is the one they will tear apart." I did not feel fear immediately, not in the screaming, not in the shoving, not even when warriors scrambled for shields. Fear came when I looked at Kai, and he looked at me like the sun had just fallen from the sky. "Tayo," he whispered, "don't listen." But I already knew. Somehow, deep in the bones I never asked to own, I knew. The spirits hadn't chosen me to dance. They'd chosen me to bleed. The oracle lifted her staff again, its tip glowing with ember-red light. The elders formed a circle around her, chanting words older than anyone alive. Their voices rumbled like distant thunder. "Kai," she commanded, "take him to the shrine." "I will not deliver a sacrifice," he snarled. "It is not sacrifice," she said. Her tone was calm, lifeless, like stone speaking with a human mouth. "It is the price." A scream cut through the square. I spun toward the sound and wished I hadn't. 3 unburied stood at the edge of the village, skin wet, clothes rotted, eyes like midnight with no stars. The crowd broke. Women clutched their children. Men shoved past each other. Young warriors moved too slowly, slipping on spilled water and loose sand. More emerged behind the first wave, shambling, twitching, bending toward the warmth of the living. One of them reached the steps of the marketplace and touched the wood stall. Where its fingers pressed, the timber blackened and split, curling like dead leaves. They did not strike with weapons. Their very presence was rot. Kai yanked me away from the crowd, heading toward the warrior's compound. "Move," he said. I stumbled after him, heart hammering. "But the shrine is a lie," he snapped. "A place to bury you with honor." We rushed past the training yard. Dust kicked up beneath our feet, swirling like ghostly dancers in the moonlight. The cries grew louder behind us. I heard the crack of spears, the clash of shields, but no war cries, only horror. "Are we running?" I gasped. "No," he growled. "We're thinking." He shoved open the compound gates. Rows of training dummies stared at us with empty sockets. Oil lamps flickered weakly. Kai pulled a heavy blade from a rack, a wide, curved weapon with a bronze edge as thick as a hand. He tossed it to me. I almost dropped it. "I can't fight," I stammered. "You can move," he said, "and moving is half of fighting." He grabbed a spear and strapped a shield to his arm. I stared at the blade, its surface reflecting the trembling of my fingers. "I'm not a warrior, Kai." He turned to me slowly. "You're not," he said. "You're worse." He lifted my chin with a single finger. "You're the weapon they're afraid of." Before I could ask what he meant, the ground trembled. Stone cracked. Something slammed against the compound gate, hard. The wooden frame splintered. Kai didn't hesitate. He spun me around and shoved me behind a column. "Stay here. Do not move." The gate exploded inward. 3 unburied spilled through, water flying from their bodies like broken glass. Their faces didn't change. No anger, no hatred, no emotion at all, just hunger. Kai roared, not as a warrior, but as a man who refused to lose what he had just found. He charged. His spear pierced the first creature through the chest. It dropped, but did not fall. Its body hung on the metal like a wet cloak, limp, then twisted, turning toward him again. The second lunged. Kai's shield smashed its jaw, ripping bone from flesh. Water trickled down his arm, cold and dark. The third reached for him. I didn't think. I didn't speak. I moved. The anklets on my legs began to glow. Heat pulsed up my calves. My arms lifted on their own. I stepped toward the oncoming beast, and the drums in my mind began. The same rhythm as the festival. The same rhythm that opened the door, only faster. My body snapped into motion, spinning, bending, arcing. My blade carved through the air, not like a weapon, but like an extension of every beat in my veins. When I struck, I didn't hit flesh. I hit something deeper. The creature convulsed. Its skull cracked like pot clay left too long in the fire. Black water spilled from its mouth. It fell, dead, not walking. Dead. The other 2 froze. Every warrior in Koro had tried to cut these things. None had succeeded. But I was not a warrior. I was the dancer. Kai stared at me, stunned, and then laughed, breathless, wild. "I knew it," he said. Another wave slammed through the gate. 5, 6, 7. "Oh gods," I whispered. Kai lifted his shield again. "We don't need gods," he said. His gaze locked on mine. "We have you." And that was the moment, in the heart of the chaos, with death tearing through my village, with spirits whispering in my head, with the drums pounding inside my bones, that I understood. I was never chosen to be a sacrifice. I was chosen to be the flame, and Kai was the soldier foolish enough to set me free.